On September 29th, 2022, I was at work when my phone rang. It was a friend calling, and she didn't normally call me while I was at work, so I knew something was up. And I answered, and she immediately, almost panicked, goes, "Kirsten, Interview with the Vampire, first episode, it's up." To which I was like, wasn't that supposed to go up on the second? I have a countdown on my phone. And she goes, yeah, I know. I don't know why it's up already, but it's up. So I go on AMC on my computer, and sure enough, there it is. Interview with the Vampire, season 1, episode 1, ready to click play. To which I then considered going home early and watching it, and then I realized that was really irresponsible and I shouldn't do that. So I somehow made it through that day. I don't know how, honestly. And I got home and immediately turned on the first episode, and my life was changed. Hi. It is currently, as I'm filming this, September 29th, 2024, making it exactly 2 years to the day since Interview with the Vampire first premiered its first season, and we first got to witness in Throes of Increasing Wonder, the first episode, in its beautiful entirety. I am here today to begin my season 1 kind of throwback reaction review recap series. I can't really call these reactions. I've seen season 1 332 times, and so no part of this is an initial reaction. I do still react to everything in season 1, which will forever have the most special place in my heart, and especially this episode. But I would be remiss to not go back and revisit season 1 here on this channel, and to not do it with some of the contextualization that season 2 provides us, but also as a look forward into season 3, and also just to talk more about season 1, because season 1 on its own, even without season 2, even without knowing about season 3, is an absolutely beautiful piece of art that we get to watch all the time. So today I would like for us to watch Interview with the Vampire, season 1, episode 1, and Throes of Increasing Wonder, and talk about some of the amazing things that happen in this episode, some of the foreshadowing that we get to witness later in either later episodes in season 1 or in season 2, or things that might even, make their way into season 3 from this very first episode. And yeah, season 1, episode 1 is my favorite episode of the series still. I don't know if it can ever quite be beat. There's something about how this episode completely shattered every expectation I had for this series. It was so much more than I thought we would ever get, and it remains one of the most amazing stories I've ever seen. Season 1, episode 1 is its own beast because it works as a standalone. If this were a movie, it would work, sort of in the romance horror genre. And knowing that it just sets the entire tone for what this show is and what all it encompasses is absolutely incredible. And all the work, all the effort, every bit of acting, all the writing, incomparable episode. And I don't want to waste too much time rambling beforehand, so I'm just gonna get right into it. I do have a lot of notes. I went through and just wrote down quick ideas as I kind of skimmed through the episode in anticipation of watching it. I ended up with like 4 pages of notes. It's fine. So we're gonna go into it. There is going to be a lot of pausing and a lot of talking about things. But yeah, I hope you enjoy, and I hope you enjoy this beginning of a dive into season 1, and then probably a re-dive into season 2 now that I won't be having such gut reactions to everything, and we can actually sit back and analyze and look at the story that has unfolded before us. But without further ado, let's get into season 1, episode 1, In Throes of Increasing Wonder. This is not a spoiler-free for season 2 of Interview with the Vampire, so if you are new and you don't want spoiled about the later season of the show and later episodes, this probably isn't for you. This is not a first reaction. This is a 12 millionth reaction to this episode. So, yeah.
There are stories out there that need to be told. There should.
All right, we are precisely 1 second into the episode, and we're going to pause it. Daniel's first line, the very first words spoken in this series. There's stories out there that need to be told. We get these exact words repeated to us in season 2, episode 5. When Daniel comes back with his book after he and Louis have
young reporter with a point of
uncovered
view.
their memories of San
There are
Francisco.
stories that need to be told.
And he reads this exact
if things
line,
ever
and
get
they are
bad again,
words that Louis
these are the
said to
words
him.
you'll hear in your mind
And
like a tape.
I cannot talk enough about how Louis and Daniel's relationship has become one of the most important parts of this entire series to me. And it's so funny because Louis and Daniel's relationship in the book doesn't mean a ton to me. Obviously, Daniel is needed for Interview with the Vampire to happen. And Daniel, he shows back up in Queen of the Damned, and he does talk a lot about Louis and wanting to be with Louis in Queen of the Damned. But this Daniel, what the writers have done with Daniel, the way they have fleshed out this character in a way that has made me absolutely care about everything that happens to him and care about his and Louis' relationship so heavily, is so important to me. And I think the way that their stories are always going to be intertwined, the way that Louis really is Daniel's angel, and I think in a lot of ways Daniel kind of is for Louis too. I love them, and I love that this is the first line of the series and that we get to come back to it and witness how imperative it is that Daniel feels this, which I don't think he feels right now, and how this interview revitalizes that there's stories that need to be told. I love it so much.
This little fucker changed all of that.
Okay, so first, a couple of things. I remember watching this the first time, and at first I was like, wait, is the episode starting? Because it's a commercial, and it quite literally feels like a commercial for the first couple seconds, and it doesn't feel like it's part of a show. And then you realize, oh no, like we are in the show, and this idea of a commercial. And I just keep thinking now about how much did they really have planned regarding Vampire Lestat being this kind of documentary that we've seen in the little teaser trailer and everything, and using this initial opening scene to establish Daniel as this television known figure, in order to get us kind of into the documentary style that we're going to probably be seeing this upcoming season. Also, Daniel with the cell phone. So one of his books, which I'm going to talk about when it pops up in a second, one of his books is all about the internet and everything, but he says that with the phone, he says this little fucker changed everything. And I think a lot about, in season 2, episode 3, Armand, before he starts getting into like the 1700s flashback situation, starts talking about cell phones really briefly, and specifically says something along the lines of humans being slaves to their electronics, to their phones. And
your cell phones make you slaves to your fetishes.
I don't know, I feel like there's a
And
connection
data retrieval is primarily
there also with the vampire mind link that has them all connected worldwide. And I feel like the whole cell phone, internet, vampire mind link situation is going to be really important to season 3. I don't know exactly how, but I feel like we can see the beginnings of that already establishing themselves here.
You've never been easier to distract.
Okay, so the first thing with these books, so as Daniel's going through his commercial, these books that he's written pop up. And so I paused and I'm like looking at all of them. First of all, I think there's a misprint on this first one, A Shadow on the Skin. It says, first published as a running series on Kaposi sarcoma and the beginning of the AIDS epidemic, Daniel Molloy's highly anticipated book, A Shadow on the Skin, captures the fear and anxiety of a nation on the brink of an unprecedented public health crisis. So when I typed in Kaposi sarcoma, it came up as Kaposi, not Kaposi, so I just think there's a misspelling there. But the AIDS epidemic bring up is interesting. I mean, it makes sense, obviously. Daniel is in San Francisco in the 1970s. And as we learn very quickly in this episode is that he is frequenting gay and queer bars. So obviously he witnessed a lot of the beginnings of the AIDS epidemic. But also there's a lot of discussion, and it's brought up with some of Anne Rice's stuff in academic studies, and it's been brought up in other things, but like AIDS epidemic in the way that it impacts the blood, and then vampirism being like a blood thing. There's this really great academic article called Sex, Blood, and Undeath, the Queer Vampire and HIV by Carlin Levine. And it goes into just like the history of tracing like queerness and vampirism and the way that vampirism and queerness go hand in hand, and especially following the 1980s. And then also goes into like authors like Poppy Z. Bright talking about the AIDS epidemic and the impact it had on vampire media. And for people that don't know, Poppy Z. Bright has written vampiric works before as well. If you see back there, I have Anne Rice and Sexual Politics, which is a really, really, really great academic read on just Anne Rice works all around. The first chapter is focused on Interview and the Vampire Chronicles as a whole, but then it gets into her other works. Mayfair Witches, Belinda, Cry to Heaven, a couple others. It's great. And it kind of talks about it in like one little section very briefly. But anyway, Shadow on the Skin, very interesting. The second one is an environmental and political book. The environmental thing's interesting. Daniel doesn't really strike me as like a care about the environment kind of guy, but he also did grow up in like the time period where a lot of people did, so maybe I could just be misreading that. And then this last one, so the one before this is the internet one, but then this last one is a memoir, and also it says, so it's Hayton Ashbury by the award-winning author of Veto Proof and Homelandia, which is a book that doesn't pop up on this list of books that he's written. I'm curious. I wish that I could see like publication date on these. Obviously this memoir is posted or published later in his life, but yeah, I'm interested. I wonder how much Daniel's books are going to get brought up when it comes to this documentary and when it comes to us seeing like the fallout and aftermath of the publication of Interview with the Vampire. Okay, so this little list that pops up right after he says honesty is not a tactic. It says investigative research, seeking sources and documents, verifying information, preparing for an interview, and journalism's future. And I just feel like this list is entirely relevant to every part of the creation of the novel Interview with the Vampire. And I think journalism's future, again, gives us headway into this documentary style, because documentary has become a very leading source in the way journalism is done, any type of like video media in general. But yeah, we're a minute and 10 seconds into the episode, and I feel like so much has already happened, and like nothing's happened yet, like at all.
Still want this job?
It's your money. I'm Daniel Molloy. This is my Russian activity.
The way that Daniel's watching himself on this commercial, and he just looks so dead to the world, just like he like it's like he's waiting for something to like reinvigorate some life into him, and obviously, as we know, the interview does do that, and it does it in more than one way. And I am curious to see if we also explore any of Daniel's like living relatives and friends and stuff, as he's now a vampire. And you know, he says he has 2 daughters and like 2 ex-wives, and we know that he's like running in like the New York like journalism and TV news reporting and like all those circles. What's gonna happen there, and are they gonna notice and comment on the difference in his quality of life? Okay, so this look on the bite mark. First of all, I love that we're just immediately focusing on the bite mark. They very much are trying to establish with this beginning part that Daniel was attacked, and we see it like in just a minute when he gets the tapes and he starts listening to them, and he's nervous, he's heavy breathing. The vampires absolutely scare him to death, and Daniel's no stranger to fear. He talks about some of the people that he's interviewed, and he talks about them a little bit more in season 2, and just he's interviewed some really higher up people that are a little scary in like the political world and whatnot, and it just, I know he doesn't know exactly what happened, but he knows something happened. But also, it's worth it to go and finish this story for him. And I think kind of like Louis, and I'm going to talk about Louis and Daniel as foils of one another. Louis telling this story, Armand says it as Rashid at some point in this season, that you're chronicling a suicide, talking to Daniel about Louis' story. And I feel like Daniel feels very much the same way about himself. I think in a lot of ways, I think he might be expecting death, and I think he's kind of okay with it. And I think it has to do with that almost apathetic look on his face as he's watching himself on this commercial. Yeah, I don't know. He also is putting together a puzzle, and the puzzle is The Fall of the Rebel Angels by Peter Bruegel the Elder. And I'm not an art galley by any means. Like, I know art, and I've seen a lot of amazing art in my life. I've been to the Sistine Chapel a couple times, so I like to think that I've been to the Louvre like I know art in general, and I did a couple art history classes. I know some stuff, but I don't know a ton. But one thing I think that is really interesting about this painting is that originally people thought that this was a painting done by a painter last name Bosch. And Bosch actually does kind of make an appearance in Interview with the Vampire, specifically in season 1, episode 7 at the Mardi Gras ball. He has a painting called The Garden of Earthly Delights. And if you look at the Mardi Gras ball, and if you look at like some of the art sketches that like Lestat has done for the Mardi Gras ball, they are very, very similar. And I think what's also interesting is that the Garden of Earthly Delights is a triptych, and we have the Bacon triptych in Louis and Armand's Dubai apartment, which is kind of like there's a big deal made about it in season 2, and also it's just a very it's very focused upon in these first shots with Daniel. And again, this is one of those I wish I knew more about art, and I wish I could put something together that would make more sense about it. And I'm gonna talk about that piece of art when we get to Dubai in a second. But yeah, I think kind of the circular narration of like Bruegel's work being one of these opening shots, the Mardi Gras ball being Bosch, and the way that those two are connected. Again, I wish I knew more about things, but I don't. Also, I'll link some of the stuff I talk about in the description. Daniel's Parkinsons being just shown in these like couple of shots. And you think about Parkinson's disease, and one also the fact that vampirism would heal that. So I think it's supposed to heal that, right? There's been a lot of talk about, I've seen a lot of theories and stuff posted about how when you're a vampire, you're turned and you're stuck kind of in the state of you're turning. We see it with Claudia. Like, she is 14 and she will kind of always have aspects of her that are 14, even if she ages. I think of like a line that Loustat says in season 1, episode 4, an ominous observation, her young lady metabolism is permanent now. Which is interesting. So like, does the Parkinson's go away? And I think it brings into question, like, because immediately we go into this conversation about COVID, and I think just in general health risk and the way that health and blood and vampirism are all very intertwined, and this like idea of healing and this idea of death and the way that blood connects all these things. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm thinking. Why get any closer to the bug than I need?
Louis' handwriting is just so nice. Eric's arms are very nice. Just saying. 9473. Dear Mr. Molloy, I hope this letter finds you safe and thriving, if such a thing were a possibility in this bleak hour.
I've been following your career with some interest since our last meeting.
Please allow me to congratulate you.
Congratulate you on all your successes, those professional and those
personally redemptive. Passage of time and the frailties that accompany it have provided me perspective.
And I suspect
that slow car bothers me every time I watch this episode. Why are you going so slow?
Pride won't deter you from the following proposal.
In a week's time.
In a week's time.
In a setting of my choosing.
we revisit the project boyish youth prevented us from finishing.
49 years.
49 years and thousands of miles removed from
A
the room we
baby.
shared in San Francisco.
I offer
For
for your journalistic
your
pleasures.
journalistic pleasures.
Full attention,
My full
and my
attention
life story.
and my life story.
All affinities.
All affinities.
Louis de Pointe du Lac.
Pointe du Lac.
I told my editor.
Oh my
I
God,
was
it's my
meeting with
angel.
You've grown old.
Okay, so you've grown old, Daniel. When you watched this the first time, and you just watched season 1, I feel like that line sounds almost a little condescending. Just kind of this like, I'm gonna point out the obvious, like you're an older man now. Well, I'm like still young, like look at me. Like I haven't aged and you've grown old. And then you get to watch season 2 and it completely recontextualizes that line. And I think it's such a moment of happiness for Louis. Like, in a very strange way. I think he's just like, again, I think like obviously he's known Daniel's lived. And he doesn't know the entirety of what happened in San Francisco, but I think he obviously there's parts of Daniel that he remembers fully and that he wants there with him. He wouldn't have written this letter and done the second interview otherwise. And he's just so happy that Daniel's had an opportunity to grow old and live his life. And I just think that that's so nice and I love them.
Yeah, well,
You.
mortality beats a heavy drink.
Okay, so let's talk about this triptych behind Daniel. So obviously the triptych, Louis and Armand are selling it in season 2, and once it's gone is like right when Louis uncovered his memories of San Francisco, and he's obviously very angry with Armand, and they're staring at this blank wall. And so this triptych is called 3 Studies for Figures at the Base of the Crucifixion by Francis Bacon. And so when I first looked this up, I just typed in Bacon triptych, and it turns out there's like 28 triptychs that he made, which is wild. And again, this is one of those, I wish I knew more about art and like knew how to this, like a lot of this felt very over my head when I was reading up on it on a couple different websites and some different just some different takes and people who have focused their entire career on just Bacon. And it's surrealism, which I've always struggled with. Surrealism, abstract, not my forte. And these are anthropomorphic, am I pronouncing that right? Creatures, and I just keep focusing on the fact that their teeth like are showing, and the red orange background of it, and also then just like what it stands for at the base of the crucifixion, and knowing like traditionally the base of the crucifixion is John, Mary, and Mary Magdalene. Those are the 3 figures, and so just like I don't know. I just think it's a fascinating piece. I just wish I understood its significance in this house more. And also what's the significance of it leaving. That makes sense? Louis does this thing, and he only does it in Dubai.
Whole planet's
I
having a
don't think
moment,
he
I'd
only
say.
does it in Dubai,
Yeah,
but this very
Parkinson's disease,
specific
Daniel.
tone that he does, he only does in Dubai. And he typically only does it with Daniel. It is condescending. It's like the way that he says it, the specific like tone that he takes. You have Parkinson's disease, Daniel. And he says it later, is your medicine taking? Like, the way that he says it. The medicine one, like, scratches a specific part of my brain that I just adore.
And here's another question.
Okay, so this whole thing,
That's the
where's your
sun out
coffin?
there.
You're standing in it.
Where's your coffin?
So somebody pointed out
You're
it could have been Mara. It could have been somebody online. I don't actually know. In the shots that we have of Louis and Armand's bedroom here in Dubai from season 2, and in like the behind the scenes stuff, their bedroom is designed like a tomb. And I think about how unnatural that is just in general, but also this whole thing just gets me thinking about how, and Louis says that a lot in these episodes as like the interview is kind of first starting, that he's perfected like his vampiric instincts. Like he doesn't kill anymore, he doesn't whatever. And I just think about how not vampiric he is at all. He is not a vampire. He's not acting like one like under any circumstance here. It's just so not natural. Everything about him is not natural in Dubai. Not sleeping in the coffin. And I do think about like Louis probably has a lot of trauma about coffins, given the trial and everything that happened with that, but I also we don't see that explored yet, so maybe that shows up later. I don't know. But he's not sleeping in a coffin. He's up during the daytime. Like when Daniel starts this interview, it's like 9 or 10 in the morning. Like, why are you doing up? Even I'm in bed at 9 or 10 in the morning when I don't have to be up. And so like the sun's out, like, and again, as Armand gets to open up the window briefly, like we know the sun is out. Not killing people and drinking out of blood bags, which I do think makes more sense in like the modern time period. And I'm not saying I'm against it. I'm just saying it feels very anti-vampiric in a lot of ways. I'm curious to see how much of Louis' vampirism he's really going to embrace now that this interview is concluded, and now that the truth has been revealed, and now that he, I think, has found some peace. I'm curious about it. I'm really excited about it. Armand's crazy. I'm not going to comment too much on Armand here, just because he doesn't do a ton in this episode. Obviously, we're easing into our Rashid as Armand reveal. I will say, I talked about this in another video, but my friend that I watched all of season 1 with, she clocked Rashid as Armand from like this opening scene with him. She was like, "That's Armand," and I was like, "You think?" And she's like, "Yes." And we had like a whole thing about it, and she had all these reasons. She's like, "This happening is very Armand, this happening is very Armand, this happening," and like the more that it kept going on, she was like, "This is Armand." And then we had a conversation after the first episode, and she's like, "Actually, I can't go into this thinking that it's Armand, because it's going to skew all of my thoughts, and then if it turns out not to be Armand, it's going to be the worst." But then the second episode opens with that Marcus painting, and she was like, "It's Armand." You know? You forgot what human life is like. I think a lot about Louis and Lestat's little fight and their coffins, and it's a cute little fight. It's not even like a serious one, with Claudia, or they're fighting in French. She's like, "Fighting always sounds funny when it's in French." And Louis says something like you're like, "You've forgotten what it's like to be young," which is, I love when he calls Lestat an old man, because yes, that is an old man. Old man Lestat. I think we should call him old more. It humbles him. But like, it feels very much like that. And I know there's been a lot of talk about how Louis becomes Lestat in a lot of ways. And like, I think like not in great ways. Like, I think he's like taking on like Lestat's worst qualities when he does take on parts of Lestat. So I'm excited to see him take on maybe more of Lestat's better qualities. And also just, you know, for them to get back together and be their own people anyway.
That's my voice, but I don't remember it. I ask all the wrong questions.
Yes.
There's contradictions in your story I never follow up on.
Yes.
The few good ones I do manage to get out, you steamroll over them. It's not an interview, it's a fever dream told to an idiot.
Yes.
A do-over.
Truth and reconciliation. Literally the entire show. Truth and reconciliation. It's amazing.
I'm Daniel Molloy. It is 10:08 in the morning on
Louis'
June
smile
14th.
here. I think so much about how lonely Louis has been for 70 years. Completely chasing the guilt away and chasing self-hatred and hatred for others and grief and never succeeding at it. And I think about so often about how much a lot of that stems from the fact that he loves Lestat still. And at this moment in time, he very much still thinks that Lestat is responsible for Claudia's death, and he hates himself because he loves him, even knowing that. And so I think about how lonely he is, and how when you watch like season 2, episode 5, and talking to Daniel, and they make like a genuine connection with one another. And Louis seems so happy now that Daniel's there. You know that Daniel's been lonely too. Seeing him on that couch, you know that he doesn't talk to his kids, twice divorced. He never really mentions any friends. He mentions like a doctor. I think they were both just so lonely. And I think their friendship is just so important. Their relationship is just so important.
So, Mr. du Lac, how long have you been dead?
His laugh. Oh my God, it's the most beautiful boy in the world.
The year
Okay.
was 1910.
Storyville. So my only knowledge of Storyville was I read The Witching Hour before, and Storyville makes an appearance as a setting in Anne Rice's Mayfair Witch series. I've only read the first one. And so I didn't know a ton. I knew that it was legalized gambling and prostitution and whatever. And I've done so much research on Storyville since this show has aired. What a fascinating little piece of history Storyville is. And this set design of Storyville, it's in like the behind the scenes feature that's on AMC, where like this is a full backlot, like old school Hollywood kind of backlot. And it's amazing. Like the production quality, the amount of work, the amount of effort put into every single detail of this show.
It was a neighborhood called Storyville.
That was the old red light district, yeah?
20 blocks of drinking, gambling, and gluttonous whoring.
And
Okay,
gluttonous
so
whoring,
as
and
the
who's
honor-
the shot on? What's our first shot of Lestat? Which is such an homage to Tom Cruise's Lestat outfit that he's wearing when Louis and him and Claudia are walking along the river, and Claudia first spies that woman. And he's wearing this like big old hat and this outfit. It looks so much like this. Like you would swear this is Cruise for a second. Just like the general, just like shot. And it's great.
full executor of the family's estate.
Okay, so
You
the
were
blue
in
book.
what
So the
business
blue book was
exactly?
literally just like a list of the kind of prostitutes you could find at these different brothels. Wild. Of course he has it. Okay, Louis' suit. So Carol Cushel, our lovely costume designer here at Interview with the Vampire. Again, I talk like I work there. I don't. She has talked about this specific suit and using gold and like these warm tones, and how Louis is so very much the sun, and Lestat is entirely drawn to him because of it. And I think a lot about how like they are each other's sun in a lot of ways. Lestat's just very golden in general as like a character, and the way that he brings light to Louis' life. I love that for them. What's that? Someone's wearing like a weird mask there.
Thing, man.
I need to know her story.
You had to be if you wanted to survive.
I need to know.
You couldn't look.
This entire scene is wild.
I was only trying to
First of all, I
show you
love
my
Briggs.
love. Fuck you.
I think we should just bring her back. I don't care if it makes sense. Bring back Briggs. But the reality of like a white racist politician
Hitting on me.
being with a black woman still, of course.
To pull out, he kept on fucking. So I gave him a little squirt of my catfish dinner for going there.
I feel like I don't remember that. The blood squirting out of his head. Ugh. I made a friend watch this episode a couple months ago. And this whole thing, she was like, oh my god. Correct.
In the towel.
Oh, the blood out of his head. I didn't think he noticed that. Ugh. That's so gross.
We the Pointe du Lac, sir. Oh, Pointe du Lac. Oh,
I don't think I've ever watched it like this close before. I think that's why.
another one outside 122. Mine out from the maggot, driving away business. You know what I pay you for? It's a citizen priest. The Lord told me to come with me. In my
I think we could do a whole video on birds as a symbol and imagery in this show.
Please, we're having a fucking night, okay? I can't have it with your food. Get on home, else I'll bleed you like a cochon, bruh.
Okay, I have to comment on this before I comment on Lestat's crazy ass for a second. I genuinely am obsessed with this scene for all the weight that it carries just in general, but also because I swear to God somebody had to have had, somebody in that writer's room, somebody that looked at this episode has siblings, because he has a knife at Paul's throat. You know, they've just like thrown punches, they have absolutely whatever. And the next scene is literally them sitting at the breakfast table next to each other, just like complaining to mom about it. I'm like, he pulled a knife on me. And he's like, you are being annoying. And they just like go back and forth. Ultimate sibling scene. Siblings will do the craziest shit to each other and then be absolute best friends like 20 minutes later. I know this, I have a sister, little sister, and yes, that is actually exactly how it works. It's the most sibling thing I've ever seen in my life. I've commented on it so many times. Every time I watch it, I'm like, somebody has siblings there.
But as I alluded to before,
Okay, now let's comment on crazy.
you couldn't look weak on liberty.
Well, let's see crazy
You never
first.
knew
There he
who was
is.
watching.
What is your problem? Like, never mind.
He pulled his knife on me, Memo.
You would disrupt
The siblings, like,
You hear that, mother?
his mother though.
Oh, Paul. A month from my wedding day, and what do I dream about?
Like
Dancing in my
this, like,
husband's arms?
Grace kind of like, I just wish we'd all get along, and immediately Louis and Paul, who've been like fighting,
might look like.
Your man.
like, start laughing and like joining each
He's
other.
gonna make your daughter jump a broom.
I'm sitting right here.
Plenty of rooms down at the made their sister's home. Like,
He's calling me a witch, Mama.
Pointe du Lac, you walk that back.
I'm like, Louis just laughing at it. Like, they were just fighting 45 seconds ago.
Stubborn.
Now they're best friends. Look at them walking together.
I promised our father on his point of fact, I loved him more than
It's a
anyone
beautiful
else.
shot.
In our daily stroll to St. Augustine.
I don't know how they got them to agree to like film in this church though, especially the later scenes.
Nothing is beneath me, son.
I miss his brown eyes. I swear to God, season 3, I need just like a couple of scenes of like when this whole thing was going on with Louis and Lestat before they actually got together. And I need those beautiful brown eyes back on my screen just for a minute. Tom Anderson. I have so many thoughts on Tom Anderson, and I miss Chris Stack so much. Chris Stack is one of those, like, I think we should find a way to bring him back just for fun. And here we go. Here he is. Okay, so the first things that we hear said are only the impossible can do the impossible. So for people unfamiliar, only the impossible can do the impossible is in fact one of the very first things that Nikki says to Lestat in the Vampire Lestat. It's on page 38 in my version. And it's right after Lestat has killed the wolves, and Nikki's dad is the town tailor, for people that also don't know. And so they've given him a cloak and boots made from some of the wolves. And one of Lestat's brothers says, now he will really be impossible. I felt my face color, outraged that he should say this in the presence of these men, but when I glanced to Nicholas, I saw the most affectionate expression on his face. I too am impossible. Someday will you let me come talk to you and tell me how you killed them all? Only the impossible can do the impossible. And so that being the first real line that we hear Lestat say is interesting. One, is he recounting like the wolf killing story to this like random woman in New Orleans? But also just the tie-in to Lestat's past as a whole. It's really interesting that it's brought up at all. And then Louis getting to say the line it feels weird.
Bonsoir, monsieur. You speak French?
We speak all sorts of
His
tongues and
face.
rhymes.
Like never mind. Louis' face is the funniest
through
though.
the front door.
Excuse me?
I mean that as a compliment.
But then it's a compliment.
Privileges here.
Louis has a small...
He drives me crazy. He's actually insufferable. It's so annoying because like it works. I just want ooh. Lily's so sick of him. Lestat's thing for needing to like buy things for people, gift giving being such a love language for him. On boat. Like the most annoying person you've ever met. Lou is just like the what? I mean, he starts talking again. Like nothing happened. Like that was a normal thing to do. Louis' face this whole time is so funny to me.
I couldn't
What are you doing?
Staring me down as his hands went wandering the seams of Miss Annie's dress.
He looks so mad even now. Like, we are so far removed from this, 100-something years, and Louis like the most annoying person I've ever known.
He's gay.
I don't like eye contact, so like,
Straight.
don't look at me. And San Luis was to be my destiny. And now I know I was right.
Now I know I was right.
Not gonna lie, this would work on me.
All
It's
right,
real
turns out the
smooth.
saint is not acidic, but
Very
a handsome
irritating.
man.
You're his destiny, Louis. Lily knows what's up. Lily knows what's happening. Lily doesn't have to have mind reading abilities to understand what's happening in this situation. The big dick contest. Like, men are so irritating. Louis. Masculation and admiration in equal measure. I wanted to murder the man, and I wanted to be the man. Literally, the most important line I think about Louis' character. Not the most, but one of them. And I think, I'm hoping so much of the exploration of Louis in these later seasons is going to be some of this realizing he doesn't need to posture so much, because even in Paris and even in Dubai, he has been posturing a very specific kind of masculinity, a very specific kind of vampire nature, a very, like, he hasn't quite been him, maybe ever really, outside of maybe in the privacy of like his and Laustat's home when I think it was safe. And I'm really excited to see, you know, him not have to posture so much, not have to posture that type of masculinity, not have to posture really anything. And the way that Lestat embodies the kind of man that Louis knows that he's like supposed to be in this life, and the way that he isn't that man, and that that's okay. And I think this like coming to terms with it anyway. So good. Also, still having the calling card all these years later. But I left thinking of only him, one of the gayest lines of the show. This place is called Pirates Alley. I know this because my friend that watches this, and she went, oh, that's Pirates Alley. I don't really know what that means, but it's a place in New Orleans. I will say this kill seems like exceptionally violent, like for Lestat. I know like they're probably just trying to show us like the horror elements of all of this. I do enjoy the messing with him with the whole like turning the lamps back on and off. That's a great addition, but this kill seems really violent, unnecessarily so. This stupid rat joke, and he's so proud of it. The
Find yourself
in
Riverside
French.
and Decatur, you have only yourself to
Hold
blame,
on, the
Mercy.
face card here. Oh my god. What a face. I would be evil if I looked like him. I'm just letting everybody know. Of the 6-foot variety. They released the poker scene as a clip like early. And I remember we all saw it, and like the general online reaction was like, you two are in public. You two in public. Stop looking at each other like that. And wearing that gold again. I love that little pearl in his, little pearl pen in his tie. See, Louis is cute. You can laugh at him, he's cute.
Ain't based the street.
The way Loustat looks at him is just embarrassing at this point. Like, we know you love him. That's also how I look at Louis, so I get it.
There's capital investment.
God, Chris Stack is
And
so
there's
good at making you
labor.
hate him. Why are you bringing him into this? Like, what makes you think he knows anything? I really need Louis to question things more. He doesn't question enough about Lestat. He's talking in your head, babe. Like honey bun, sugar plum, love of my life. There's a man speaking in your head. He stops time. You need to think about it. Somewhere they said, I don't know if this is in like some of the after stuff that's on the episodes or anything, but this is all practical special effects, which is so amazing. And everyone having to stand still that long and just creating things that do that.
And do you think to pair?
His face here. No. Why are you just taking cards from a man that stopped time and is talking in your head? You don't have a lot of self-preservation skills, and it's okay. The looks given here. You're in public. In time, Louis. Patience, Louis. Ask me next week, Louis. His love with my city. Okay, a couple things here. So the first one is, we don't see a ton of it clearly. We are in like a limited like storytelling time, you know. But the way that it's established, that beyond everything else, Lestat and Louis really just like each other. Like, they're genuinely just like friends. Beyond everything, they are friends. They enjoy spending time together. They enjoy talking. I think that is the biggest difference between any relationship either of them have ever had. And I think it's going to be one of the most important driving factors going into season 3, which is, I think, the realization that they do just like each other as people. Also, he was in love with my city. We all know that he was in love with Louis, and I think the existence of Louis as New Orleans is so important to Lestat as a character, to the story, and I think also, I'm hoping, crossing fingers, I'm hoping that New Orleans is more important to the show than it necessarily is to the books. New Orleans, obviously, it always shows up, but the vampires do establish themselves in France predominantly, and I just don't want them to. I want them to be in New Orleans. I want them to be established in New Orleans. And I'm hoping that this comparison of Louis as New Orleans, in the way that obviously Louis is New Orleans and Lestat was in love with Louis and hasn't left New Orleans because it's Louis to him. Yeah, I'm hoping that establishes New Orleans as a much more permanent place. Look at them. Clothes shopping, furnishing the house that'll eventually be their house. Like, you know that when they were like looking for things for Lestat's townhouse, that Lestat's like, whatever he likes, you know, because he's gonna live here.
It was a cold winter that year.
And Lestat was my coal fire. That line took me out. It's still my Tumblr blog title because I literally cannot believe that that's a real line that existed in this show.
I was being hunted, and I was completely unaware it was happening.
Lestat, you can't eat him there. He's the best big brother. Now, why are you bringing Loustat to your family dinner? What made you think that that was a good idea? It's not. Never mind. I love his and Louis' little coordinating green ties, though. Okay, and talking about his past at all, though. Talking about his mom, first of all. And also, like, I love how this does age him. Like, it shows, like, flintlock rifle. Like, what? Him sharing anything about his past, I remember being really taken aback by some of the things in season 1 because Lestat in the books, just Louis quite literally doesn't hear anything about Lestat's past until the Vampire Lestat is published. And so him talking at all about his mom, him talking at all about like even like his mastiffs and stuff, like, is crazy. Talking about wanting to be a priest and his dad and all that stuff that we're getting ready to like see. Knowing that Louis knows about Nikki. I actually was skimming through Blood Communion the other day about something, and Lestat says something along the lines of like, I can't recall if I've ever even told Louis about Nikki, which is wild, like outside of like the writing. And like we know that he has in this, like it gets brought up several times that Louis knows that Nikki exists and knew about all of that, and I think in general knows Nikki's story in general. And then just even like the episode 6 little bit of give at Magnus, like completely surprising pieces of Lestat's past to be getting in this season. I genuinely didn't think we would get anything about Lestat's past until they did Vampire Lestat. So it's interesting. It's going to be interesting to see exactly what information Lestat was able to pick and choose and kind of work with.
I do love this bouillabaisse.
What?
Lestat's face with Paul sometimes, he can't quite make sense of Paul, and I just think that that's kind of great, but... Louis having to lie about the opera, and Lestat's face because Louis is lying about the opera, and just...
Exactly as the nature of the relationship with my brother and this shit.
Also, just the fact that everyone knows Louis is gay, it's like the thing you don't talk about, you know? Paul. Listen, I'm watching episode 1, I'm always really proud of Loustat. Not always. But he does really good like holding back where I don't normally think Loustat was able to hold back. This is one of those. Like, I know this dinner goes to hell. The monastery conversation. But like, I'm proud of him. I think he does really good.
Memorize both.
Loustat's whole priest journey makes me so sad. Like, he just wanted to be a little, well, he just wanted to be loved, but, you know, we know your father, babe, you know. Okay, one thing I do wish, we haven't gotten it in any adaptation of Interview, is that Louis has to kill Lestat's dad. It never has made it into anything, and I feel like we should be able to see it. Well, Lestat just sits there and watches it happen.
To answer your boring question, there is an ocean between...
His pupils got so big. What an intense little situation. I would simply leave. I'm cursed with my father's temper. And then in episode 7 of season 2, I'm burdened with my maker's temper. I do love Florence being like, it's the humidity. Actually, same. Someone that grew up in the South, yes, actually. It is the humidity. This little walk back. If I had to have tricks, I'd have done the same. Stop just calling them tricks. I need you to question things more. This flirting is so gross. Think good getting off that boat when you did. Gross. Why are you flirting? My commentary is going to be very professional as we move forward. I won't giggle at all, ever. I do think the way that Louis and Lily are twinned, in a lot of ways, and I wish there was more of an exploration of her as a character, because I think you would see it a lot more, but fascinating. And I think Lily, one, I mean, you can make up a lot or just interpret a lot about her because you don't have a lot to work with, really. The music box thing, oh my god. But the way I think she is in love with Louis and just wants him to be happy too, I think is so important. The Pride and Prejudice hand moment in interview. It's right here. Hold on, where is it? Right here. Lily. I do miss her. I do feel like it was unnecessary to kill her. I feel like there's a lot to be nervous about. He's in your head again and you're just like not doing anything about it. I'm just...
Such a pretty head.
I remember I was very taken aback by that. I was like, what is happening? I need to go back on my blog. I like live blog watching this. Just like typing it all out. I was kind of going. Just seeing where I am in my notes. Crazy scene. Actually a crazy scene. Yeah, that checks out. See, Lily, she's always known what's up. And I love that she's very supportive of Louis. Like how he's just like, okay girl, you've done your job. Gotta go. I did kind of think he was gonna kill her the first time I watched this. Like in the movie scene when Lestat kills that one prostitute and the other one's just like, oh, she fell asleep, and like kind of like makes fun of her, and it's like, I wouldn't do that. I kind of thought that's what was gonna happen. The way that it's so important that Louis initiates the kiss though, it's so important. Never mind. I was gonna say something, but I'm not gonna say it. I remember there was like a brief shot of this that made it into one of the trailers, and I was like, what is happening? This is what was happening. The noises are a lot stronger in my headphones. Okay, so back to my actual notes on this. Louis and Daniel as foils of one another. Very important here. Louis is talking about not being confident in his sexuality, but how he's come to embrace it. Immediately goes into, but of course you know that we met at a gay bar, didn't we, Daniel? It was a good place to score. I did what I had to, and immediately just like kind of goes back to what he's doing. And obviously we know that's not exactly the case, because when we get into season 2, we know how very much Daniel was on board for about anything with Louis de Pointe du Lac, which checks out from how most men feel about Louis de Pointe du Lac. So, and I think it's so interesting because Louis and Daniel, they're paralleled in a ton of different ways. And I don't know, like, I don't think we've explored Daniel's sexuality enough in terms of like his own feelings on it to really understand like where he personally stands with what he considers himself, if he labels himself at all. But he seems very dismissive of it here. And I think, I think of how important it is that Louis is very dismissive of his own sexuality, especially like in this first episode, for obvious reasons. And the connections that you can make there with all the other connections that are there between Louis and Daniel. This black tar heroin comparison. The sex is good. The sex is good. I guess. To Saturn back? I mean, dick game is dick game, I guess. I don't know. Un petit cul. I think a lot about how important emotions. Ugh, I hate the sound of when like they cut into their flesh. I was gonna say something, I got distracted by hands. Emotions, that's what I was talking about. The way that Louis talks about emotional connection with Lestat is something we never have seen him talk about with anybody else. And again, it's this whole why they have to get married again for the nth time. I hate how defeated he is though about all this. Like this I can't be this. Yes, you can. And I love you, and you can do whatever you want. So the tap dance scene. So my own little personal story about the tap dance scene is that my parents were Game of Thrones people, naturally. And my mom's favorite character was Grey Worm. And so when the show first came out, like that's when I was trying to explain to her who's in it, I was like, well, like Grey Worm from Game of Thrones is in it. And my mom hates vampires. I don't know if I've ever told that story. My mom hates vampires, so she was like, oh, he's doing a vampire show. So I knew I couldn't really show her like anything from the show that much. But I did show her the tap dancing because I think it's so cute. And she was like, oh, he's so cute. And that's what she used to always say about him. My only experience with Jacob Anderson as an actor was just like in passing as my parents watched Game of Thrones. And whenever he'd be on screen, my mom would just be like, he's so cute. Yes. Yes, he is. Very cute. No, the way that they didn't have to use the dance doubles, and it was all Jacob Anderson and Stephen Norfleet, who plays Paul. See, and it's these kinds of scenes that just make me so grateful for this writing team, because in Interview, Paul is dead by page 8. We get nothing that like establishes their relationship outside of like a handful of like little interactions. I love Jacob's face here. And so you don't get to see like any moments of like Louis happy even. You just get just the sad character. And don't get me wrong, Interview is my favorite book of the series still. But I love how you get to see the person that Louis is and was. And I think it just makes so much sense watching this. Like, you're like, I can 100% see how Loustat fell in love with him. Look at this. Like, come on. These shots are gorge. Ellen Taylor, thank you. Like, that shot, wow. I think you should get married next. And then he does. He's so pretty. Oh, Louis. I think it's interesting. In the books, Louis and Paul get in a fight when Paul dies. And it's very much not what's happening here. I think that makes it, extra devastating. Not that the fight and everything wasn't its own kind of devastation, but I think, how was Louis supposed to ever have thought that that's what Paul was going to do? And the thing about The Last Sunrise, Louis' speech in the books about The Last Sunrise is really kind of famous. My aunt actually a couple years ago bought me a shirt that has that entire speech on it. And again, this mortality thing and this foil of like Louis and Daniel, and I think Daniel views death as this inevitable of his life right now, and I think Louis also views death as this inevitable of his life at this point. Florence and blaming Louis for Paul's death. In the book, the police question Louis about Paul's death. Like, he is a suspect in it. He doesn't go too in depth on people being, he mentions yes, everyone kind of questioned it, but it doesn't get into these kinds of levels of blame or anything. Ugh. And with Florence right now, it's the thing nobody talks about, that Louis is gay. They don't talk about it, but she knows. She's not dumb. And then this happens, and I think it's just she just needed a reason. Any reason really to fully blame Louis. He hasn't done anything that she could really question. He's kept the family afloat. And then this. And then we have the funeral, and Lestat's ass shows up. Just unbearable at the funeral. What is your problem? In episode 3, when he goes up to play the piano and you hear someone in the crowd go, "What's wrong with that man?" That's me with Loustat, literally at any given point. What is wrong with that man? Why would you say that? Why would you say that? Miss Lily proved yourself a poor substitute is a wild thing to say. Why would you say that? Music is beginning. Viens-moi.
My sister's pity.
Louis' alcoholism isn't something we see a ton of, but it does show up. And Anne Rice did become an alcoholic for some time following the death of Michelle. And so seeing those kind of come together, but also the way that this in itself is reminiscent of, in the movie and in the book, when Lestat first sees Louis, it's when he's being reckless. When he's there's like a really famous shot of like Brad Pitt in the movie version where he's like at like a poker game or something and like cheats and just like does this like shoot me kind of thing. Yeah, like, and that's what's happening here. Like, we're seeing that happen in these like just snippets of Louis following Paul's death and following everything, which is when he does resort to like this alcoholism and recklessness in the books. Come to me, just, and the beginning of Jacob Anderson's Emmy. Why does he not have an Emmy for this? That's how I know awards aren't real. Like, what do you mean? Like, it's amazing. It's so good. The absolute fear and devastation just there in his voice, and the shaking, and then shows up with these giant ass saber-tooth fangs causing a scene. I too would love my monster boyfriend, so I can't say anything about anything right now. This slow-mo scene is wild. Obsessed with it. I think that this is one of the most ingenious like bits of editing to show vampiric power. Stunning every time. And I know Rolin says that he doesn't like the priest head punch. I like the priest head punch. I think it's great. Is it necessary? No. Ugh. I think it's right there. Now he's panicking. Wipe out most of the blood, guts. Okay. This speech. It has shackled you in permanent exile. Rage you must feel as you choke on your sorrow. Oh, Louis is so scared. And Louis trusts him though. Like I think he'd be running if he didn't. There's absolutely a part of him that is just like, I know you. I feel like I know you and I trust you. Lestat and religion needs to be like a whole own video too, because like, bruh, like, just have to ask me for it. You just have to nod your beautiful head and say yes. I remember I was so shocked that we got an I Love You in episode 1. And it's so good. And the barbaric scene that surrounded me. I'll talk about that in a second. First time in my life, I was seen. Be all the beautiful things you are. Be them without apology. For all eternity. What a speech. The noises are a lot in the headphones. This shot right here, hottest shot ever, bar none. Ugh, the tearing of flesh again. Jacob's line delivery and the way that Louis is telling this in Dubai The actor that he is. Oh my god. Ooh, the heartbeats are like really strong in the headphones. Oh yeah, I forgot to talk about the hickey situation. Hickeys. I understand why there were hickeys. Like, you watch this and you're like, yeah, that makes sense. Yep. Just really going to town on that wrist. It's... I opened my eyes.
I opened my eyes. And it was then that I realized.
It was my heart. And the other drum had been his. Radiant. This shot. In throes of increasing wonder. The end. The beginning. And the way that this season's finale is the end and season 2 finale is the beginning. Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about is just the way that brutality and romance are, how they just coexist so well in that last scene. You go from this horrifically devastating confession that Louis is giving to the brutal murder of the priest that he was just confessing to, and Louis' stabbing of Lestat, and Lestat's throwing of Louis, and then the murder of the other priest. And then it proceeds to go into the most romantic speech you've ever heard in your life, and you're like, and not just like a romantic speech, but a speech that completely, like, Louis doesn't say anything during it, but his face, like, you can tell that he feels the love that is like radiating from Lestat in that moment, and that it is reciprocated, and that absolutely scares him to death. Followed by Louis' acceptance of this, and not just an acceptance, but, you know, as Santiago says in like the trial, like, you know, he reached up and kissed you at the altar. Their marriage, like, for lack of anything else. And then the turning scene, and like, you know, turning scenes as we're going to see, and I mean, as we've even seen to some extent, it can be absolutely brutal. And it's not often, I think, that vampires are made out of love in the way that Louis is. And then that pullback shot, though, like, as soon as, like, you're like, wow, like, things, like, so romantic and this is amazing and beautiful, this pullback shot just shows, like, you know, these bloodied footprints and these dead priests, and there's fire, and it's like, oh, shit. Like, the way that the horror and the love are completely coexisting, and the way that horror and love cannot not exist with one another in this world and with these characters. Again, setting the tone for the entire show, done in one episode. I love In Throes of Increasing Wonder more than anything in the world. I could genuinely watch this episode over and over. I mean, I have. I don't know why I'm saying I could. I have. I watch this episode all the time. And I don't know if I will ever get over how beautiful it is. And the acting, everyone's just, I mean, obviously everyone, Sam and Jacob, and everything that they bring to this first episode, to establish the fact that this show is at its core a love story outside of everything else. It's amazing. Again, and the way that this works as a standalone, technically, like, I feel like you wouldn't need anything to follow this. I'm eternally grateful that there's so much that does follow this. But, like, I think if you were to make this just a movie, and just, that would work. It works as its own standalone. It's amazing everything that's done. Alan Taylor as director, beautiful work. Again, I've watched this so many times and I'm always at a loss for words on just how much I adore it and how important it is to me. I don't know. Interview with the Vampire, season 1, episode 1, the greatest episode of anything of all time. It's gonna take a lot to beat this out for me ever in my life, and I know it's gonna be an interview episode. It might be like the series finale for when that happens in like 15 years, because I refuse for the show to not last another 15 years in my head. It's gonna be something, maybe, if it ever does, but I wish I could replicate the feelings I had the first time I watched this. I watched it so many times that first day too, and there were a lot more tears the first couple times, but thank you for watching. If you stuck around and watched Interview with the Vampire season 1, episode 1, and Throes of Increasing Wonder with me, I am going to a vampire ball this upcoming weekend, and depending on, because I'm gonna try to like record some stuff while I'm there because it's fun. I went last year to the vampire ball and it was a great time, and so if I have like enough content to feel like I can make a video, but I'm also like I don't know how to do content in public because I don't need people perceiving me. So if I feel like I have enough content, the next video will be more about my vampire ball and all the stuff, because there's like a vampire rock band, which I complained about last year because I was like, excuse you, you're not the Vampire Lestat. Last time I did get drunk and did a toast to Louis and Lestat. It was great. It's on video and it's just me going, I love them so much. Will probably happen again for sure. We get drinks out of blood bags, to which I was like, oh my god, the farm, and proceeded to post about Louis and Armand for 25 minutes straight. Yeah. Don't go to a vampire ball with me if you don't want to talk about Interview with the Vampire, because I will not actually talk about what we're there for. I will talk about my vampires the whole time. But if I don't have enough content, we're gonna do season 1, episode 2, After the Phantoms of Your Former Self, which is such a good episode, and every time I like rewatch it, I'm struck by how good it is again. There's some crazy things that happen in that episode. Crazy things. But until then, thank you for watching, and I will see you guys next week.